We are going to be drawing each of these four lips from these different angles in the different lighting in order to practice the different angles and lighting that any of your final projects could potentially have. For the first step, we're going to be breaking up the reference picture and the rectangle that you're drawing into these four different quadrants. So I'm just drawing dashed lines on the tops and the sides of the reference picture and the drawing rectangle. Now I'm using these lines as a guide to see where the tops and sides of the lips are going to fit so that I'm using accurate scale and proportions throughout. Once I have everything blocked in with the layout of where the top and the bottom lips are going to be, I'm starting with 3 circles on the top lip and 2 on the bottom. So I'm going to start with the smallest circle right in the middle where the middle of my top lip will be, and then 2 larger circles on either side, and then underneath these 2 largest circles representing the spacing and placement of the bottom lip. So this will help me to create the shape of the lip as I'm working, and the entire time I'm still looking at my reference picture to get the accurate angles and placement of things as I go. And then from here, I'm going to start to really lightly outline anywhere that I see dark highlights and light shadows, and then begin to lightly block in those darkest areas first and continue to build layers from there. So now I'm just continuing to block in those shadows and then starting to go over where the medium tones are as well, and then layer things in, slowly darken those darkest shadows. A lot of the lips here have a very dark value to them, so definitely show that contrast, show the areas that are the darkest and the areas that are the lightest with all of those medium tones in between. I do have this reference picture flipped upside down. Every once in a while, definitely flip them upside down to get a different perspective, to be able to see more of the differences between your reference picture and your drawing that might not have jumped out at you if your picture was the correct way. And now I'm flipping it back around, bringing in my eraser to erase some of those lightest highlights to make sure that those stand out. Now I'm going into the second drawing with the second angle here. Again, I'm blocking in where the sides and the bottom and then top of my lip are. Now these lips are at a slight angle, which makes it a little bit trickier. So if you hold your pencil up to the angle of the lips, bring it over to your drawing. That will help to make sure that you have the angle correct as you're working. I'm lightly outlining all of those highlights and shadows. There is a good amount of highlights on the lips and around the lips, so make sure you do pay good attention to what's going on around the lips, as this will help to tie everything together when you get to your final project, and slowly start to build in those darkest values and medium tones as you're working. Everything doesn't have to be super detailed as you go, so don't focus on just one area, but continue to place your focus on the entire lips and around the lips as a whole. So move around as you're shading. Now I'm flipping my picture upside down, seeing that this darkest shadow under the lip needs to be darkened, so some areas will jump out at you when you do flip these upside down, so don't forget that step. And then just continue to blend. So make sure that there's no huge jumps from really dark to really light. Make sure you're blending in all of those medium tones. Right along the top lip, there is this light highlight, so erase that out as you're working. And then looking at that light highlight around the bottom lip, and then that darkest shadow. So really pay attention to the lighting and the contrast throughout. And now I'm just adding a final layer of detail, so making sure that everything is finished properly and I have the texture of the lips on top. Now moving on, I'm adding a quadrant to the outside, looking at where the outside of the lips are, the shape of the top lip here, drawing that smaller circle in a different place. So look for where the center of the lips are, which are going to be a little bit more off to the side. And then double check the angle of the cheek as you draw that in, and then block in those darkest values first, which will be on the top lip here, and then the top of the bottom lip, and around the outside of the face is mainly more of a medium tone. So make sure that you're filling that in with your medium tone values. Then I'm continuing to touch up the values that I started, so blocking in those shadows a little bit darker, blending areas of the darkest shadows into more medium tones, and going back in and touching up highlights. Now I'm moving into the last set of lips, which have a good amount of contrast here. So look at where the circle for the top lip will be. So I only drew one circle here since this is at more of an angle. And then I drew 2 circles for the bottom lip. And you can really see where to draw each of those because there is that darker shadow down the middle of the bottom lip that you could draw in for the spacing between the 2 circles for the bottom lip. Then I went through, outlined highlights, shadows, looking at where there's the highlight around the top lip, and then where that darkest shadow should be placed underneath the bottom lip. And then look at the details and the value change within each part of the lips themselves. On the bottom lip, it fades from dark to light, and then the top lip fades from the inside, dark to light on the outside as well. Then I'm blacking in those medium tones, leaving the highlights white, which I could always erase in if I need to or if I accidentally make those too dark. And then making sure to really darken that center line as you're working, continue to build those darkest layers so that they do become the darkest values to create contrast where those light highlights will really stand out.